Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Today we are going to talk about Linux and specifically about my experience using Pop! OS. I've decided finally to ditch the Windows and Mac OS and move entirely to Linux. This experience is quite challenging and interesting at the same time, because when we talk about moving to Linux, you typically have multiple options and sometimes too much options. And those options actually quite confusing. For example, Pop! OS was not my first choice, because before I was considering different distros. For example, initially I was considering Cache OS, and then I've decided, okay, Cache OS is nice and it looks nice, really nice, but at the same time it is Arch based, and I have no experience using Arch distros, unfortunately. And at the same time, also it's not as stable as Pop! OS, because Pop! OS is based on stable versions of Ubuntu, and Cache OS is not. It's a rolling distro, so it's a different kind of thing. Then I thought about using Zorin OS. This is based on Ubuntu and it's targeted for Windows users that I decided to switch. I have experience using Zorin OS in the past, and I even purchased it like Pro version of it or something like that. And it just looks like Windows, and I'm not migrating from Windows to use Windows once again. So I decided, okay, no Zorin for me. That's how I got to Pop! OS, specifically because I have an NVIDIA card. And you can see right here, discrete GPU is active. And if we type something like NVIDIA SME, we can see that yes, NVIDIA card is actually used. And this is quite interesting, because in most of the time you are challenged when you want to install NVIDIA drivers for your laptop or your machine. And in this case, in case of Pop! OS, if you go to download, you actually have the specific version for NVIDIA graphic cards. So for me, that's what I'm going to use. And then I've installed it. Well, I've tried to install it multiple times, and then I've decided, well, I need to partition it all manually, because whatever it provides is not working for me. Okay guys, so when you decide to install Linux, I highly recommend you to dedicate a separate disk for that. Let me actually show it to you. So I have the Windows drive right here, and it's all partitioned for Windows. It has a separate EFI partition right here, and yeah, I just don't want to mess around with Windows boot stuff and stuff like that. I just want to have a separate partition, because who knows what it's gonna do. It's like BitLocker stuff, some other encryption stuff, and I don't know. Windows is going some mad things those days, and I just want to have a separate partition for that, so it only touches that partition. Again, there's no guarantee that's not going to corrupt my Linux partition, but well, let's see. This is my separate partition for Linux. I just actually physically installed a separate drive for that, 2 GB drive. The problem is that I already had a partition which is called media, and this partition primarily stored like some development data, movies and music, and I wanted to stick other partitions right here. And that's where the problem comes in, because you need to put some space before that partition and after that partition. So when the Pop! OS installer actually sees it like that, it gets confused, because, well, it only primarily designed that you install it on a partition and just takes the whole space. And then again, not much customization options, and I wanted some specific customization options. That's how I basically reinstalled it a couple of times until I got the system the way I want. So let me actually show it to you. So you need the boot partition, like boot EFI, right here. It's a FAT32. I've decided to have separate partition for games, which is like 200 GB, and it's BTRFS, not ext4, but BTRFS. I've decided to use this file system, and I'll explain you why. Okay, so this partition for games, and this is the media partition, which is INTFS. Probably not the best file system, but like for transferring data between Windows and Linux, this is probably one of the best options. And then the swap partition, I've decided to allocate 39 GB, and the memory size of my machine is 32 GB. So yeah, it's something around my machine memory size. And now the main partition for Linux is BTRFS. Why? Because I've decided to have subvolumes, and this is the feature that nobody talks about, and this is actually quite interesting because I've never knew about this. So first of all, I had a LUKS encryption on that volume, so every time you boot your machine you need to unlock it, similar to BitLocker but much more free and much more customizable. And then of course I have sub volumes right here. It's like almost 700 GB, but I have sub volumes. Guys, let me actually show you how subvolumes work. So if you type it like that, BTRFS subvolume list / it's going to show you all the subvolumes. And first of all, of course, it's home. It's like a main partition for storing your user data, and I've configured it so it actually stays at home, which is actually cool. And this is preferable way of setting things up. And then of course root, which is the partition where your main data is located. And then we have snapshots. And snapshots is also like a really cool feature of BTRFS, because you can use specific software or just use a command line to make a snapshot of your system before you do some critical upgrades or changes or stuff like that. So in this case, we have Timeshift, BTRFS, snapshots, and this is the timestamps, of course, when it was actually backed up. Now let me actually open the Timeshift to show you how it works. But before doing that, I want to go here and disable tiling, because guys, I'm really confused with how tiling works here at times. I don't know, maybe I'm not got used to it, but still, it's like all those workspaces are confusing to me. I've never used the virtual desktops and stuff like that. I've tried to use things like this in macOS, but I never actually liked it. I never got used to that flow. Well, maybe it's my fault, I don't know. But, well, again, let's open the applications. It's how it looks like. So you can launch applications from the Applications tab. You can add additional groups. We are using the Cosmic desktop, which is like a customization on top of the GNOME. So basically, this is something that System 76 came up with. I actually like it. Especially they've customized it many ways, because they have like Cosmic settings like this. And for example, it actually took me some time to find this in application default applications, how to set the default applications, because I've used the command line before. But yeah, so this is how it looks like. And for the most part, it's actually quite good. So I like the way it's set up right there. But again, some additional updates and fixes would be highly appreciated, because not everything is ready, and some things you need to still do manually. Like for example, the BTRFS stuff you all need to do manually. And there is no way you can set it up using some kind of UI, as far as I know. And well, this is a Linux, and when we talk about KDE, for example, there are lots of default applications right there. But in case of GNOME and Cosmic Desktop, well, stuff is just basically, I don't know, not really polished that much, I think. So let's open the Timeshift and let's see how it works. This is how it looks like when you press create. It's going to create a snapshot of your system. It's like a couple of seconds and it's ready. And as you can see, I have some comments right there. For example, I did something like moving some volumes from one place to another and changing stuff around, changing folders, just changing system folders, so lots of stuff there. I've decided to use Timeshift to do backups. And it specifically works the best if you have BTRFS set up, like with all those subvolumes, because if you don't have those subvolumes like home and root set up properly, it's not going to work. And there's also rsync available, so there are multiple ways of syncing stuff around. BTRFS is quite powerful. Right. What is the best source of truth when we talk about the partitions and mount points? Of course, this is the Fstab. So if we go here, we can see how everything is outlined. So boot EFI, which is my volume for booting my operating system, then we have crypt swap, which is a swap actually crypted, which is good. Now we have a recovery partition. So if you have it, it's going to install specific small version of Pop! OS right there in case if you want to restore the working state of your operating system. So which is really great in case you don't have a flash drive or something like that. Now we have subvolumes right here for BTRFS file system. So which is the root. You can see the BTRFS file system type and then home, of course. The main thing that I like about subvolumes is that you do need to decide how much space you want to allocate for those partitions. And it's actually not exactly partitions, but subvolumes, more like a folders. So you don't need to decide how much space you need for those. This is the best part of it. And you can create and delete those subvolumes the way you want, so which is actually quite powerful. And then we have mount games, of course, on a separate partition. This is not subvolume, this is a separate partition. By the way, subvolumes are specified like this: subvolume, subvolume. And also notice that we have compression right here, ZSTD3. So this compression means that our files actually compressed. And whatever we have have on a hard drive, like on a flash drive in this case, it's actually compressed and it takes less space, like 20 to 30% less space that it's supposed to be, which is quite good, I would say. I like it. Now let's talk about installing software. Well, we have a Cosmic Store, which is typically installing Flatpaks on your system. And to be honest with you, I've tried to use it multiple times and I've decided to use either app images or just install system versions of the applications. If you go right here, for example, you can see that you can install it using the FlatHub. There's like selection right here, or you can pick system. But if you pick a FlatHub, it says January 16. But if you select like system, it shows you, well, in this case, it shows you nothing, but a typically much older version. For many packages, it's actually quite outdated. Let me see. Calculator, FlatHub. Yes, it's like this. And then system version is, 2023, which is like super old. So yeah, I'm not sure if you want to install the system versions of the applications, but it's up to you. You can, of course, use different sources to install those applications, so you can customize it the way you want. I don't really like this store because it's quite, I don't know for whatever reason, it just doesn't feel complete. And this selector between system, which is like showing me the very old apps, and FlatHub, which is quite limited, because, for example, I've tried to use some powerful things like browsers using the FlatHub, and the system integration is actually quite lacking, because in case if you want to, like, for example, browse the file system or like drag and drop stuff around, typically that's where the problems comes in. So Steam actually works. So I'm logging in. As you can see, the Steam is just working fine. You can mount your separate drive for the games, and it actually detected my media drive and tried to use games for the media drive, which is quite interesting. I don't really want it to do like use NTFS partition for the games, but well, it works. And you can also add non-Steam games. If you press add game and add non-Steam game, in case you want to run some non-Steam games or applications, you can use this option right here, and it's going to use Proton, which is using a Wine underneath layer to run those Windows applications. And sometimes it actually runs better than Windows runs those applications, I would say, sometimes faster. In case of old games like designed for Windows 98 or Windows XP, for example, sometimes the games are working better compared to what Windows 11 provides. This is the reason, because, well, for Wine it doesn't matter. You can just like create the container the way you want. And compared to Windows, for example, Windows 11, it's going to actually use some additional layers, backward compatibility stuff, like layers on top of other layers, and you never know how it actually works. In this case, it's going to be simple. Specific containers for specific game or application, and it just runs fine. So guys, this is what I think about Pop! OS, and it's really useful for me, and I'm going to actually migrate from Windows to Pop! OS entirely, because I'm still running Windows for running my .NET code, for example, but I feel like I'm actually migrating. I'm actually getting used to it finally, because after so many years when I tried to switch to Linux, now the time is there, because Mac is a closed platform that you cannot modify, you cannot change. It's only designed to work the way they want. Windows is becoming like a telemetry kind of spyware thing, where it actually doesn't work the way you want at all and doesn't care about you. Linux is something like in wild. Basically, you are on your own. Every crash, everything that goes on here, well, you are responsible for that, because you need to customize all the components so it works the way you want. Otherwise, well, good luck. And it means sometimes buying the hardware specifically to meet all those requirements. Guys, thank you for watching. I hope it was useful and interesting for you. Please press the like button, subscribe, and see you soon. If you're interested in this BTRFS stuff, I'm going to create a separate video for that. So let me know, and bye.